pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Peter, don't contradict me in front of the kids.
Oh, as brothers and sisters fighting is as natural as a white man's dialogue in a Spike Lee movie.
What's up? Can I get 2 slices of pepperoni?
The pod bay doors are open. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Doug Heller, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToMe.com, joined as always by my friend, Jerry Dean Roberts, film critic for ArmchairCinema.com and ArmchairOscars.com. Jerry, what's going on?
I can't be no Muslim. I like pork and white women too much.
Thank you, Shorty. Today, we are wrapping up Black History Month with, in my personal opinion, one of the finest films ever made.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Spike Lee's tragically un-Oscared masterpiece, Malcolm X, featuring what might be Denzel Washington's greatest performance.
I would go a little further than that and say this is his best performance.
Yeah, this is some of Spike Lee's most beautiful filmmaking, next to maybe Four Little Girls.
It's an epic.
It is. It is an epic of grand scale, telling the life of a man who was controversial, rightfully so.
And it's not as inflammatory as I thought it would be.
Well, he keeps a lot of the kind of incendiary stuff to the beginning and the end, and goes for just a straight representation throughout the rest of it.
And by the way, I understand the irony of two lily white dudes talking about this movie, because
well,
there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate white speak in this movie.
Well, yes, but it's
not for nothing.
No, I mean it's genuinely all justified and earned, and you know, there's a point where his anger turns away from just a single group of people, white people, to be just the institution itself and all of the people who are party to it, regardless of what they look like.
Well, let's talk about this too before it gets away. We need to talk about where Spike Lee was at this point, because a lot of, and you alluded to it, a lot of the reasons that he never, his films didn't get nominated for Oscars, I think a lot of it had to do with the controversy that was going on with him personally. Mm-hmm. Because at the time, and he's backed off of this a little, he's backed off of this a great deal as he's gotten older. At the time, he was very outspoken about his dissatisfaction with Hollywood and the Hollywood system, justifiably so.
Yeah.
But from their point of view, it was seen as ungrateful.
Well, what would he have to be grateful for? They shut him out from day one.
What I'm saying is, and I'm saying this is how it was.
Well, sure.
This is how it was seen from their point of view, is that he had so much success. They were like, well, you've had so much success, but you're still knocking the system that's helping you get there. And the thing is, that's largely why I think his films didn't get nominated for the Oscar. It wasn't the films.
No.
It was the man.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking, why do we want to reward somebody that's consistently complaining about our industry?
See, here's the thing, though. He was fully justified in condemning them because, yes, he got a measure of success. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the system was fixed because he had success. It's the same thing as saying, you know, oh, well, the United States must not have any more racial prejudice because we had a black president for 8 years. neglecting the fact that his successor was a rampant, horrifying, racist white supremacist. So, you know, it's like when you have that success in a broken system, you break through and you say, hey, I made it despite the fact that it's broken, but there are still 100,000 others who are just as good or better than me that are getting shut out because of the color of their skin.
And we're only now dealing with it.
Right, barely. And so...
It's getting better. It's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's good.
No, but I mean, it's gotten better.
Saying it's gotten better is true, but that it's getting better, and I know this isn't what you're saying, is not a way of saying, well, now we don't have to work on it anymore. It's we are making progress and need to continue to make progress, because better doesn't mean good. Better just means not as bad.
Now we don't have to deal with it anymore.
Exactly. We just gave it to Parasite. Now we don't have to deal with a foreign language film as Best Picture for the next 150 years. You know, it's one of those like, oh, we gave Halle Berry the Best Lead Actress. She was the first black woman to win Best Lead Actress, and now she is the only still. And why?
Yeah.
Why? When there are people, when there is Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson,
well, I mean, the time he was doing things, if he was doing a lot of things to piss off he was doing a lot of things to piss people off, and he was doing a lot of things that did, like, I don't know if you remember this, but when this movie came out, he publicly encouraged school kids to skip school to go see this.
Well, it was the only real kind of education about Malcolm X that they would actually get.
That's true, but skipping school...
I was 11 when this came out, so...
Yeah, I was 21.
Yeah, I think I knew it existed.
I didn't see this in a theater. I had a friend who saw it in the theater.
That would be a hell of a rush. Oh, God.
I had a friend who saw it in the theater, and he said... he and his friend went in, and they were the only white people in a theater of 300. Mm-hmm. And he said, when that first speech comes up, he said, I got nervous. He said, I'm sitting there, and he's like, I feel weird.
See, that is a difficult, because I get, because you're seeing people rant against the very thing that you are, but at the same time, it does not give the people in the audience credit to know that they're not just going to be instantaneously swayed by this stuff and attack the white people in the theater.
But it's at the moment you don't know what's coming for the rest of the movie.
True.
And they were thinking, I'm thinking this is going to be the rest of the movie. Yeah. He said, I'm thinking that speech is going to be the rest of the movie. And he said, I'm starting to feel a little, diminutive in a sense. It's like...
But I'll say he didn't walk out, though, did he?
No, he sat through the rest of the movie.
That is really to his credit, and probably why nobody noticed him, because he didn't get up and say, "That's bullshit," or just get up and leave and say, "Oh, the crackers are gone."
Throw tomatoes at the screen.
You're right. So it's to his, and that was a bold decision for the South. Honestly, staying in the theater.
Well, and
actually, I'm impressed it was even shown in the South, but.
Oh, well, as I've said before, you'd be surprised. You would really be surprised.
Well, remember, it wasn't too long before that. It was probably only 20 years before that, where maybe 30, that they were like, well, you can't have a movie that has certain things because it won't play in the South, and we won't. No theater would contract things like that. in the heat of the night
long
didn't even
past
put
that. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Let me tell you this. When Black Klansman came out,
that's another one that we're going to talk about in a couple of years.
you wouldn't believe, you would be shocked by the lines on opening weekend when that came out. I mean, those shows were sold out. And, I mean, it was incredible.
Which is
but this movie
encouraging. But yeah, this picture... I know it's weird that I was like super happy to be picking this, and it's been on my docket since we started this.
Yeah.
Kind of...
and you know, when you have a movie, we're talking about when you have a movie this, and you know, that's I don't know if you remember this, but when this movie came out, there were a lot of problems shown in the media with movies like New Jack City and Boys in the Hood. Where they were having problems at theaters in some cities, you know, and surprise, surprise, they didn't have anything to do with the movie.
No, they never do.
So this came out, so there was security at the theater.
Of course.
Just to see, you know, because you know,
institutionalized racism. Yep, continue.
But
sorry.
just to prevent any issues, just to prevent any problems.
Yeah.
And that's largely, you know, when my friend went to see it, that was largely what was on his mind. Because it was like, okay, what's going on? But the thing is, once you get into this movie, once you get to it, and you realize what it's about, and you realize, and there is a lot of justified anti-white speak in it, wall to wall.
Oh yeah, yep.
I'm going to tell you, I had not seen this in years.
It had been quite a while for me too,
and I had forgotten what a great film he had made.
Oh, yeah. This movie.
And he'd been talking about this for so long that I mean, he'd been talking about this for 5 years.
Yeah, and
by the time it dropped,
this just, I mean, okay, so it's 3 hours and 20 minutes, 22 minutes.
Yes.
3 hours and 22 minutes long.
10 minutes shorter than The Irishman.
Right, and it has a glorious pace. It is fast moving. It's like Schindler's List. You don't even realize the time that you're spending with it, or the Dances with Wolves long cut. It's so energetic. No, I think you feel that one a little bit more. And I love them. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, but the extended editions can get a little wearisome. But
well, I want to tell you my reaction to this was I was absolutely surprised, shocked, and delighted, especially by the first hour of this movie,
which could have been its own movie.
I was going to say that it absolutely could have been its own movie.
Him coming into his own as a person and getting into the criminal underground that he was getting into, that would have been just a great movie in and of itself, and then end with him going to prison and then start Malcolm X2.
It kind of was.
Malcolm Unleashed.
It kind of was because you learn all about his background. This sad childhood. He was born in Nebraska. His father was preaching the philosophies of Marcus Garvey. And he was murdered by the Klan.
Yeah.
And brutally murdered by the Klan.
Yeah. He was smashed in the back of the head with a blunt object and then put down on a rail car track that
and then then Marion broke up the family. The social worker comes, and it's played by Karen Allen.
Yeah, and I was like, is that Karen Allen? And I was looking through every cast listing that I could. She is not credited a whit. Even on IMDb with an uncredited little pit, she's nowhere. But
there are actors who pop up in this. Christopher Plummer's in it.
Yep.
Peter Boyle is in it.
Yep, as
You
the police chief.
It's kind of like one of those. It's kind of like one of those Vincent Minnelli movies from the '50s, where you just every few minutes another star just pops up. Like some movie where you'll have the piano player, and then it's turned around, and hey, it's Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just these, they keep popping up, but yeah, Karen Allen shows up for just a brief cameo as the social worker who breaks up the family.
Yeah.
And
we don't think you can take care of them.
Right.
Oh, that's a concern now. But the murder of the father, that's not a concern. But the children now you're worried about the kids.
What about the insurance agent?
That was heartbreaking. Oh, it's suicide. He hit himself on the back of the head and then laid down on a train track.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they. No.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to tell you, this is the most cinematic film he ever made.
Yeah.
That scene where, I think it was when the Klan comes up and they threaten the father, and then they ride off, and there's this horizon shot as they're riding toward the horizon, and the moon is gigantic.
Yeah.
It's just this, it's a brilliant shot. And again, his kind of screw you to Birth of a Nation.
Yeah. I loved that when they're riding off. It's like you.
Yeah.
He has been outspoken against Griffith for a very, very, very long time.
For a reason.
Justifiably so. D.W. Griffith was a horrendous, terrifying racist, and pro-Klansman. Despite the fact that Intolerance is probably one of the best movies about inclusion that you ever could possibly have, he made that as an apology to Birth of a Nation so that he could still get work. Because even in 1915, a lot of people were like, yeah, this is too racist. 1915!
Yeah.
Bear in mind that isn't it the same year or a couple of years before the Tulsa Massacre?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like... They're even this is too much. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And it is a lot. It is a lot.
And it's a struggle to sit through.
It is. I have managed it about 4 times.
Mm. Yeah, you've managed it 2 more times than I have.
I actually had to watch it in its entirety in a World Film History class.
Mm.
It was all 3 hours in an auditorium. Technically, I've seen it in a theater. When we were walking,
a black actor in that movie.
Nope, all of it was blackface. When we were walking out, one person just goes, "Somebody please talk!"
Somebody say something.
We were all filing out and just dead silence. It's like most of the people...
Your brain was numb for 3 hours of this nonsense.
Most of the people had never seen it. And that was like the 3rd time I was watching it. I'm like...
You know what? It wades in that netherworld that I think also includes Triumph of the Will, in which you're
Gone with the Wind.
You're trying to figure out... Well, Gone with the Wind's... I wouldn't attach that to these 2 films, but because at least Gone with the Wind is trying.
Gone with the Wind is only lightly racist. Is that what we're
It's trying.
For the time, I guess, yeah.
But it's kind of they're kind of floating in this netherworld of, do we call it art or do we call it trash? And subject matter wise, yes, you can call it trash, but artistically, you can't deny it.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the craft.
It's a very difficult film to take on. That really, Birth of a Nation really, really calls into really makes you call into your film critic basement. You've got to pull up everything about craft and leave everything about story to the side.
Well, it's the same thing with Gone with the Wind. It's like you got to pull the craft out, but you've got to pick the peanuts out. You've got to pick the you got to pick out the parts that do work.
Yeah. But this is Malcolm X. It would be easy and wrong to call it racist or reverse. There's no such thing as reverse
he does
racism,
have
but
an explanation
absolutely.
for everything that he says.
Absolutely.
The thing is, in the first hour of this movie, I'm sitting there and I'm like, we're introduced to a cast of characters that are only contained within this first hour.
Mm-hmm.
He is, by the way, please, Spike Lee, make a musical.
Oh.
Please make a musical, because that scene in the dance club in Boston.
The scene in the dance club, the choreography that they have after Malcolm gets his hair straightened.
I love that.
When they're in the suits and he's like, "No, swing it," and they're swinging their hands and they're both in perfect sync. That man could probably
which I haven't seen since Tex Avery cartoons.
Right.
You know?
That kind of choreography, that man could do a hell of a musical.
Yeah.
Spike Lee can do anything, in my personal opinion.
But it's interesting. He establishes the culture of the 1940s and how they dressed, how they talked, what their habits were.
And the first thing you get is somebody getting their hair straightened with lye, which is
it's lye. It's called concholine.
Horrifyingly painful.
The tagline used to be, "If your hair is short and nappy, concholine will make it happy."
Oh God! I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. Oh boy, that's
that was the tagline for it. But they put this crap in your hair, and it contains lye, and they're combing it, and it starts to burn.
Right, because it's a very, very harmful chemical if it gets onto your skin and can start to eat through your skin because it's very abrasive.
Because it's burning the roots.
Right, and it's so now. They're called relaxers, and they don't have lye in them, but they still hurt. Note to all of the white people here: you can still get scalp burns from a relaxer. I've seen it happen on my wife.
There's a payoff.
She doesn't use them anymore.
By the way, later on when he's straightening his hair and he goes in and the water's been cut off, and so he sticks his head in the toilet.
Yeah.
And he gets arrested.
Yeah.
He's got his head in the toilet.
Get your head out of the shitter, boy.
And it's interesting. It's just the whole world that they live in is fascinating. It's like the dancing at the beginning. You can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it because this scene introduces us to, I think, one of the most fascinating characters in the entire movie, and that's Sophia. Because when she approaches him, first of all, she stands out. I mean,
yeah.
This beautiful blonde woman.
I was actually afraid she was going to ask him to bust up a Schiffer robe.
Yeah. Actually, I thought she was going to take him to his car and then scream rape.
Yeah, or take him out somewhere to be lynched or something like that.
Yeah.
I instinctively did not trust her the way through her entire time in the movie.
But the funny thing is, the way she approaches him is so sensual.
Mm-hmm.
My reaction would have been exactly what his reaction was.
Yeah.
He was just kind of a gape.
Yeah.
Because the way he photographs her, the way she is photographed, it's Kate Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
It was so great on Battlestar Galactica. he sees her across the crowded room, and she approaches him very slowly, and it's just very seductive.
Mm-hmm.
And she becomes part of the operation, as it were. And I was thrilled that the movie spent so much time with these characters, with Sophia, with Shorty, with later he meets West Indian Archie.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these characters are so interesting. They're a movie unto themselves.
They are. And like, can I just want to give a quick shout out to Delroy Lindo, who has been criminally underrated his entire career.
Yeah, but I'm watching this and I'm thinking this was originally supposed to be played by Sam Jackson. I like Delroy Lindo, don't get me wrong, but I'm looking at this and going, Yeah, it's like either or. Which
what was he shooting that prevented him?
See, this was shot in '91.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Well, he was in everything. So
yeah, I know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And this was pre-Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. So. Yeah,
but,
I don't. But Delroy Lindo is always good.
He is remarkable.
And
in this film.
he is continuously over. He's never been nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
And
right. And he's kind of disappeared. Wasn't he on Oz?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a health thing or what, but I think he went on to television. Like he's a little older now too, isn't he? Almost in his 70s.
Yeah. But he was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And he could play anything.
My introduction to him was Get Shorty.
Yeah.
And
which is a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
That's one of Travolta's best.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's been doing some television.
Mm.
And
he's got that memorable face.
And
he's got such a memorable face.
Such a voice.
That could play hard and mean, or could play a man of wisdom.
Right.
And he's played both.
He's sometimes at the same time, which is really awesome. He
was terrifying in Clockers.
Oh yeah. He can be malevolent and he can be benevolent. It's a fine line that not too many people can walk.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's interesting that Malcolm doesn't start in a life of crime. You have to. Why I'm so dazzled by the first hour of this movie is not because. It's not just because of the world it builds. It's also because I realize what a lesser filmmaker would have done.
Yeah.
You would have had 5 minutes of exposition about his background. Maybe 5-10 minutes of gunplay. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to jail. Boom.
Well, yeah, it would have been a half an hour, and then that would have just gotten him to prison, and then another hour of him converting, getting out of prison, and trying to do that, and then the last half hour would be the denouement. It would be about 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And it would not be comprehensive.
Just the world of these characters, when he walks into a bar and a guy just insults him, and I keep...
He just smashes a bottle across his face.
Let me tell you something. When I see moments like that, I keep thinking of your comment when we did when we talked about Do the Right Thing. Don't be an asshole. If you don't want bad things to happen to you, don't be an asshole.
See, that's my little life lesson for anybody is if you just don't be an asshole.
Yeah. This guy, he walks up and he bumps into him, he spills a drink on his shoes, and the guy just won't let it go, and Malcolm just says something about Malcolm's mother, and Malcolm just smashes him over the head with the bottle. And Detroit and West Indian Archie sees this, and that's what gets him in
Mm-hmm.
with the gang.
Yeah.
And
It's a brash move.
yeah,
And he was a very brash young man.
yes,
I mean, all of that leads up to when they go back when they go back to Boston and they're gonna rob the guy's house, and you know he's doing the Russian roulette thing.
they're robbing the guy's house,
and
the people are in bed
they go up and he steals the pinky ring from the guy's hand
while he's sleeping.
I'm like, leave it there, Malcolm. Leave it there. But no.
But they're standing on the side of the
That
bed.
is bold as brass, man.
Oh my god! It's just stealing from them while they're asleep, and I'm like, okay, I'm not that heavy a sleeper.
Yeah, I mean, unless he had like, maybe he gives them sleep, maybe he takes sleeping pills or something.
Sleeping pills or something. I don't know.
Oof, oof, oof.
But what I found interesting is all of this culminates in them getting arrested. He gets, what was it, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
1 year for burglary.
Yeah.
And 7 for being with white women.
Right. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, because you know the word they were served. If they had to do it back to back, it would have been like 120 years in prison.
Yeah.
But then he said they have to serve it concurrently, which got them out a lot earlier than never.
What's interesting to me about this whole set, this whole piece, this whole hour, the first hour of the film, it has an epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
Later, after he gets out of prison, he meets up with Shorty, and Shorty tells him what happened to everybody.
Right.
And he's telling him, poor Sammy died in bed with one of the prostitutes.
Yep.
Came and went at the same time. And they show this dead man and this poor woman just and then they show you what happened. I think Sophia probably got off light. You know, she became a housewife to a rich man. She probably got, based on what happened to everybody else, probably got off pretty light.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't say that her life probably was super happy.
But based on what happened to everybody else.
Yeah. She
at least she had, you know.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when the girlfriend, he walks by her on the street, and she's a prostitute. And Detroit, why do I keep wanting to say Detroit Red? West Indian Archie is a derelict. He's like, I don't know exactly what happened to him.
He had a stroke.
He had a stroke?
Absolutely. If you look at him, the way that he's not moving his left anything, and he can barely move his right arm. He's like, I got to exercise my arm. He had a stroke, and he does not have any money for medical care because everything he had was in his head. So once he lost that capability, and you could tell it was definitely a stroke.
Yeah.
And he is not being cared for. He's probably having multiple strokes on top of each other at that point. You know.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, and I pointed this out when I first saw the movie. One of the most extraordinary things about the arc of this film, is that at the very beginning we establish Malcolm's background. We establish his background living in the segregationist America, the segregated America. All the things that happened. His mother went to a mental institution. And
well, when you have your 6 children wrenched away from you after your husband is murdered, and they tell you it's suicide, you're not really going to be able to hold yourself together.
Well, the last time we see her in the movie, she's she's in a room in a mental institution talking to herself.
Yeah.
What they don't tell you is that later Malcolm got her out of that institution, and she was cared for by family members.
Okay.
So it did have kind of a happy ending.
A happier ending.
Happier ending. Well, better than sitting in a room just wasting away. But he builds, and on top of that, introduces us to this man who's very immature, who's very much a part of his culture, who takes really the only avenue he has, which is a life of crime, becomes a numbers runner.
Right.
And this is Malcolm Little. This is the person that he builds for the first hour.
Second film in a row where we have somebody called Little for the first portion of the movie.
Yes. And abandons that name.
Yeah.
Because we talked about Moonlight last week.
Yes.
He builds him up as Detroit Red. And then they go to prison. So the name that he's born with is taken away from him. His mother and his father are taken away from him. His brother and his sister are taken away from him. The society, the social structure, is trying to take away his name. Because when he gets to prison, they want him to call himself by this number.
Yeah, his number. And they put him in solitary for what?
He goes into solitary. Follow me on this. He goes into solitary, right? I'm very proud of this analysis. He goes into solitary, and they put him in solitary because he won't tell him his number. He won't give in to what the number is.
Right.
He is now bereft of even his own name, his identity, and then goes to solitary where he is now not allowed to have light. He's not allowed to have anything. So
no human contact, no nothing, yeah.
What this movie has done is that he's built the identity that he's been forced to forge for himself. It builds the identity that the society has pushed him toward, which is the Detroit Red. He goes to prison where all that is stripped away. And then he is in solitary where he is effectively nothing.
Yeah. And then he builds himself back up.
That is an amazing arc of a life.
It is.
Because when they open that door to the solitary and you see the light,
2 weeks or a month or something?
He looks deflated.
Yeah.
He looks dead.
It's the first time in the movie that that he looks beaten.
Yeah. And it's just this empty shell. And then the next time you see him, he's in the shower and
relaxing his hair.
Yeah. And then he meets Baines. And you are taking the empty shell and you start filling it back up with all of this knowledge. That doesn't end with Baines' teachings.
No.
It doesn't end. He educates himself by reading the dictionary.
Yeah.
And I love the character of Baines because Baines, by the way, is
I like him while he's in prison with him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is he's that's what I mean in this context, because Baines was actually a conglomeration or amalgamation of a lot of people. So it wasn't just one person, but dramatically it's interesting.
Right.
And the reason I say I like him so much is because I love the way he talks.
Beautiful.
He walks in this, which makes you ashamed of being black. You know, it's just this very straightforward, the way he talks. It's beautiful. It's like, it's very no nonsense.
Albert Hall,
great actor. Great actor.
The chief in Apocalypse Now.
Yes. And he basically opens his eyes. This beautiful kind of scene where he opens the dictionary and makes him look up the definition of the word black, and then turns to the back and makes him look up the definition of the word white. and then goes to the beginning of the dictionary and makes him look up the word aardvark.
Yeah.
And it's so eye-opening, and these insert shots of the words as he's looking at it. It's just, you can see the gears starting to turn.
Yeah.
And he sits there and he's educating himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's driving the prison priest crazy. Because he's questioning all of these images on the wall of Jesus. This blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus.
It's like, wasn't he a Hebrew? Like, you know, and he is not at all in any way, shape, or form wrong.
Because, I'm sorry, Jesus didn't look like Barry Gibb.
Jesus could not have been white because there were no real white people at the time. We were all up in the caves in Europe, still dragging our knuckles, man. We were not. No, we were.
Like I say, and he didn't look like Barry Gibb.
Yeah, no. He was a Hebrew, flat nose, very, very probably dark complected.
If you want to know what he looked like, go to the Middle East, see a man coming out of the sand, wrapped in, like a Bedouin,
right?
Someone who come out.
But not necessarily Israel, because people who are Israeli-born now are basically just white people because they were all
right.
European Jewish expatriates that went down, repatriated back to. So they're the notion of a Middle Eastern Hebrew is very, very hard for us now. Right.
But he's and he questions, because they show you all the images on the wall. It's those pre-Raphaelite watercolor Jesus that is, the long blonde hair, the beautiful, the beautiful blue eyes and the white skin and all of that. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the Bible never gives us a description of Jesus.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah. But he starts to question, and he starts to ask, and he starts to preach.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting.
He's not wrong.
And let me tell you something. He has a spiritual conversion in which he sees Elijah Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Who this actor looks just like Elijah Muhammad.
He does.
It's incredible.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
That whole section, when he's with the Nation of Islam and continuously, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, that's demagoguery, and that's gonna fall apart, and it does.
Yeah,
and it does, in a really terrible way.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Malcolm finds out that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been philandering and fornicating, even though he preaches against it and commands everyone to not, and then, I have to plant my seed in fertile ground because, I'm all there is, and then there has to be someone after me. It's like, you just contradicted, like, half of what you've taught to justify your being a horny old bastard.
Right.
Like, it's like, I mean, come on.
But I'm going to say the performance by Al Freeman Jr. As Elijah Muhammad is so wonderful. He's so great in this movie.
I love how understated he plays the whole thing. It's all very, very quiet and reserved to the point where you can't help but kind of go along with him because he is so quietly confident. He's not shouting about it. He's not forcing people into anything. He's telling people and letting them come to the religion, which he built around himself instead of Allah. So that's why the whole thing kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a strong religion in the United States of America. There's still
Right.
a large population in the Nation of Islam, and I agree. So this is where a lot of the anti-white sentiment is spoken, and for good reason.
Well, I mean, it's couched in one thing that Baines tells him. He says, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad does not say that some people are white. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that all white people are devils.
Right. And it's that absolutism that is troublesome.
Yeah.
Although,
well, but
not
if you
entirely incorrect.
If you think about it, he looks back when he says, "Yeah, I've known some bad white folks in my time." He says, "Think about it. When have you ever known a good white person?" And
At that time, at that point in history, yeah, it was rare.
All of these people, that we've met. The Klansman who burned down his house, the woman who separated them, all of those people in the gang.
It's like
the teacher who tells him he can't be a lawyer.
Right. It's kind of like I had something and it just flooded out of my head. But it was like what Michael Moore said at one point. He said, people would ask me, am I afraid of black people or Mexicans coming to take my job? He said, no, because I've never been harmed by a black person, or every person who's ever fired me, caused hard times, has been white. I think it's in his book, Stupid White Men, which is a fun read. It's outdated at this point, but still a fun read.
I love what he says about that book. He said, when they went in to Photoshop the cover, he said, they cleaned up my fingernails. I'm thinking, well, while you were in there, why didn't you shave a couple of pounds off the face? Sorry.
And it's true. Every person that had ever really done him wrong was white.
Yeah.
Or acting on behalf of white people.
Yeah.
And
this whole culture, I'm fascinated, by the way, by this whole culture, this white separatist segregationist culture that existed for so long. I'm fascinated by all of that because it didn't exist in a bubble, and it didn't exist. And I'm sure that I have a feeling that most people who engaged in it did so because they were afraid not to. And that's not everybody, but
I'll let you have that because that's where you're from.
The teacher that tells him you can't be a lawyer probably may not have even thought that way. Just had to be that way to keep his job.
See,
because I don't believe that
it's hard. It's hard to say because
it's like when you live in a culture that is telling you that there's a separation of races, and you have to go along with that, or you won't have a job, you won't have this, you won't have this, you won't have this.
There's a question of going along with it because you have to. It falls into the same kind of line as people joining the Nazi Party, Jews joining the Nazi Party.
Right.
And that happened. Because they're talking about them over there that don't believe in this, and we'll be safe. No, nope. So the trouble is, at that point in time, this is all like pre-World War II.
Yeah.
What was regarded as knowledge about African-originated people is that they were lacking in mental capacity compared to white Europeans.
Or self-control.
Right. So the whole thing was still based on faulty phrenology from the 1850s. That, oh, if you look here at the base of the skull, this proves that they're different from, yeah, it's all bullshit nonsense, but they still kind of believed it.
They did the same thing with gay people. It's like, no, it's a mental illness.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
science
yeah.
proves that it's not a mental illness. And it's like, but the Bible says,
well,
you know,
it's only just been, I think, with the DSM-4, the DSM-5, that homosexuality was removed as a mental.
Right.
Like it's been in the 2000s that has changed. That's how deep-seated that was, and there's still that's the root of the white supremacist mentality, is that that anybody who isn't white and male is inferior to everyone who is, because fake science and it's always been just who had the bigger stick, and somehow
and they run to the Bible and tell you, well, if you read this, it's in cherry picking. The Bible is fascinating. Cherry picking the Bible and saying, well, God wants us to be separate and wants us to do this. Yes, but that is not justification for bashing someone's head in and tying him to a railroad track.
Right, or any of the myriad of tortures and things that were inflicted upon black people by white Europeans.
Lynching and burning at the stake, and I mean, how is that?
For 600 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't just forget that, because it's still happening. Like, in all parts of the country, in all parts of the world, there is, and I've said this before, there is an institutionalized anti-blackness throughout the world that has been propagated by ridiculous non-science, pseudoscience, that it's not even pseudoscience. At least pseudoscience almost has something of worth value.
But it should also be said that also falls on Jews, it falls on gays, it falls on Muslims.
It falls on everybody who's not a straight white man.
Right.
And it's all nonsense.
Right.
It's a very hard concept for me. Like, I see it, I can explain it, but I can't wrap my head around why.
Yeah.
Other than just, it's rich people telling poor people that you should still support all these rich things that you're not going to get to be a part of, because well, maybe you can be a part of it. I just read something in there's a book called the Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. It's a fantasy book. Actually, it's a trilogy. She's the only person. She's an African American writer. She's the only person to win the Hugo Award 3 years in a row for all 3 parts of her trilogy.
Nice.
And in it, I just read it yesterday. It says something like there's an expectation of people that you tell them. Okay, here they are. Tell them they can be great someday, like us. Tell them they belong among us, no matter how we treat them. Tell them they must earn the respect which everyone else receives by default. Tell them there is a standard for acceptance. That standard is simply perfection. Kill those who scoff at these contradictions, and tell the rest that the dead deserved annihilation for their weakness and doubt. Then they'll break themselves trying for what they'll never achieve.
Wow.
That is American race relations beginning to end.
Yeah.
Because every single non-white man has had to work twice as hard, twice as much, and
be twice as good
just to do the same things that straight white men get without trying.
Right.
And yeah, those were power that rocked me when I
But
read
when I'm always fascinated, I'm always appreciative of when you see a person of a certain culture, certain religion, and they're not afraid of it.
Right.
They want to honor the heritage that they have. But when this movie came out, I remember I was going to college at the time. When this movie came out, it was at the time when a lot of African Americans were. You could see a lot of African Americans wearing Afrocentric clothes.
The dashikis and
things like that.
Yeah.
Reminds me of something a comedian said one time. He said, "If you were black and you wore Afrocentric clothes, you were honoring your heritage.
Mm-hmm.
If you were white and you wore Afrocentric clothes, you were a dork."
Well, it's kind of the difference between culture and cultural appropriation.
Because you would actually see white people wearing this. I'm like,
trying to show support. Like the dummies were actually thought that this was putting them saying we are simpatico with you, when it's really just, oh, look at your shit, I'm gonna take it. Like every other white person in the world, oh, your stuff is cooler than ours, let's take it for ourselves. That's
I understand the support, but my God, it's like,
do it in a different way, man. Don't steal just to say, oh, look, I'm dressing like you, I like your stuff. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like Get Out. I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could have. Unbidden. It's like, oh, I love Aretha Franklin. It's like, who cares? Yeah. So, I mean, it's that attempt. It's the basic ignorance of a culture.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know that you're ignorant of the culture because you have dipped your toe in. You like a few songs. You like a couple of artists. You know, this color pattern.
You listen to Biggie and Tupac.
Right, and then suddenly it's like you have everything in common with every black man. No. It's nice that you like good things, but that does not make you part of that struggle.
Right.
Like, I can't claim to be part of the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And save my sister and her offspring, my only relatives are black.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not part of that struggle because I will never be looked upon and treated the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Regardless.
Right.
So, yes, I love blues. I love my wife. Does that mean that I am the same as a black person?
You like Get Out.
Yes, I love Get Out, and Us, and Jordan Peele's work, and Spike Lee's work. But does that make me on the same... No, it does not. You and I can never feel what it's like in America for a black person. Ever.
Well, and
unless we do like a Black Like Me situation, which is really, really kind of creepy. Although that was a good movie.
that whole, well, we're all the same under the skin. Yeah, fine, we're all the same under the skin, but we still got the skin.
But you should treat everybody the same, that they're the same on the inside, as you know. It's like so the fact that Malcolm's father and it turns out, dishonorable Elijah Muhammad,
mm-hmm.
both of them were preaching basically the same thing whites were.
Mm-hmm.
Segregation. For different reasons. But they're basically saying, you know, the only way that there can be true freedom is if we're just all separate.
well, and it
obviously don't buy that. But
the movie doesn't address this probably as boldly as it should, but one of the contrasts to this, to the oratory, to what he was preaching, was Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
And because Martin Luther King was teaching passive, nonviolent
mm-hmm.
response.
I think Spike Lee wisely avoided King because he didn't want to make this Malcolm X versus Dr. King.
I was just about to say that.
He wanted to make this a life of a very prominent Black American. A very to do that, it would have been setting it off as he's trying to say one is better than the other, when really he's probably got an equally great MLK movie in his head somewhere that I would love to see. Even though I really liked Selma quite a bit, Ava DuVernay was, I love her so much. But
and Daniel, I can never pronounce
Daniel
his last name.
Oyelowo? Oh,
yeah.
Why was he not nominated for that? Oh, I will never be.
What's his name? He's on Rebels.
Yeah, he's
Kane?
No, he was the
Kanan? No.
No, that's Freddie Prinze Jr. He was the ISB agent that eventually defected. Which, spoiler alert. Sorry.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Oops.
But yeah,
he
played.
Actor.
Oh God, he's brilliant.
But it's interesting.
Idris Elba still doesn't have an Oscar nomination. I mean, you know what? I'm just.
Well, the thing is, the speeches that he makes, there's a reason he got a following.
Well, sure.
The speeches that he makes are fiery and energetic.
Oh, yeah.
And and the thing is, what kept a lot of people away from this, a lot of white folks away from this movie, is because when this movie was being advertised, those angry speeches
That's what they put in the advertisements. Yeah.
So you've been had, you've been took, bamboozled, run them up. That's what they were showing.
Yeah, and you know what though, like.
So that's
I
why I say when I saw it, I thought it was going to be more inflammatory than it actually turned out to be.
Right. But the going back to the segregationist talk, Africa for Africans and all of that. I can see where at that time that might have sounded pretty good to people.
Or the philosophies of Marcus Garvey.
Right.
People like that.
But it's obvious, I think, that separation and segregation only causes more animus, because it enables uncontested stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody can say anything about any of the other people who are not within their segregated community, and no one will have any personal experience to countermand it, so it becomes truth. And then, then it escalates, it still escalates.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if separate but equal was bullshit anyway, because there was no way that they were treated equally even during that. No
matter what cultures exist in America, it's going to be a culture in America, not a culture of America.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when the immigrants came here, through Ellis Island,
when they were still allowed in.
Polish people, Italian people, Jewish people, Irish people.
They brought everything with them.
Including their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I love about this country, is that it is such a mix of cultures.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at just about anything, especially artistic, musically.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we have now is, however you want to take it, as an amalgamation of white European music and Black American and African music merging into what we have now, all the way down the line. I mean,
yeah, but jazz is all American,
and it's all black.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, you look at rock and roll. All of that came from the blues, which came from field hollers, which came from call and response, which came from Africa, and the banjo was an African instrument that was stolen by white people and made into, hey, if a black person plays this, then they're just they're minstrel showing, and then so black people stop playing the banjo.
And it's interesting that a lot of this has come from, a lot of things in this country have come from, sadly, our legacy of slavery. You know, a lot of the foods that we eat were born of things that the slaves developed because they had the scraps that the master didn't want.
Right.
That's how we got cornbread. That's how we ended up with, fried chicken, things like that. That's how we ended up with a lot of these things. And that has worked its way into the culture. It's interesting. It's because I don't know of another country on earth that's as mixed culturally as America is.
Not as I'll say maybe non-integratedly so, because there are clear definitions of what culture contributed what part to which piece of the stew of whatever you're looking at, which actually kind of helps keeping the identity of the original alive, which is really good because it helps people to it helps when people go back and want to learn about where something came from, that they can pick out, like, okay, well, this guitar riff came from Bo Diddley, and Bo Diddley learned it because he grew up in the South, and it was this, and this developed from that, and
So the documentary that we were talking about, where a lot of rock and roll and blues music came from Native Americans. And it's interesting. It's interesting what you can learn when you educate yourself a little bit. This movie is very much about that. It's because I'm fascinated. One of the things that fascinates me most is that we've been through recently a lot of biographies that were less than stellar. Yeah. I mean, two of which just won Oscars.
Yep.
Bohemian Rhapsody and then Judy Garland, and they were terrible because they were just focused in on the big moments. They weren't focused in on the individual.
Right.
This is a movie about an American life. This is a movie about a life, a man's whole life, from beginning to end.
And it has to be mentioned that first and foremost, Spike Lee was not and is not a member of the Nation of Islam, as far as I know, and doesn't really espouse a lot of the really radical teachings of Malcolm X. But he brought this story to the screen because of the phenomenal misconceptions about the man, and the simple fact that he is a major figure in contemporary Black America. He helped make a lot of the things that were platforms in the 70s that became calling.
Like Black is Beautiful?
Yeah. See, the what I love about it, the difference between his preaching of segregation and white preaching of segregation is that he was not, and there's a lot of ways to say, oh, it's anti-white speech. It's more pro-black speech. And it's loving, it's teaching them to love themselves for who they are and getting over what white America has made them believe about themselves. So
giving them a sense of identity.
A sense of identity, a sense that all of this, oh, you're lesser mentally than white people, is wrong. And
that they don't have to be what the white culture wants them to be, which
exactly.
is they want them to be happy little elves, in the home, cooking the meals, cooking the meals and doing this and doing that.
And, or like,
but living a step down.
Right. Like, when I was complaining about Harriet, how basically the whole crux of the story is you're not slaves anymore, shut the fuck up. Which is what I felt from that movie.
Harriet feels very much like it's made by white dudes in Afrocentric clothes.
But it wasn't. It was written and directed by a black woman.
It feels like that.
Yeah, it does. It's the studio hands were all over this. I question how much the writer-director really got a say on at the end of the day, or if she felt constrained, kind of like the way that they were trying to route Malcolm Little.
Yeah.
No, you have to make it like this, otherwise it won't be accepted. It's like, well,
otherwise
that's why you don't make it that way, so that you can force people to accept it on its own merits and not a comfortable, easy, smooth ride in. That's why Malcolm X continues to be a lightning rod. Because he didn't make it the way that white studio heads and white audiences would have felt comfortable with.
Yeah.
He made it truthfully.
And truthfully, but also, I want to say, in a sense, relatable, in the sense that a man can change his own destiny. Because if you... I'm just amazed that he is, at the end of this film, so far from what he was at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And he keeps changing. When he gets out of prison, I was amazed because, of course, the look is different. He's cleaned himself up. He looks very much like a gentleman.
He's externally very calm.
Yeah. But
very
he's walking
peace.
past all of these prostitutes on the street, and he's not looking at any of them. He doesn't partake in any of this, and he tries to get Shorty to be a part of it. And Shorty's not buying it.
It's like
Shorty thinks it's hype.
The FBI, when they were tapping his phone, says, "Geez, compared to King, this guy's a fucking monk."
Yeah.
Or a goddamn monk. I think they'd already used up their fucks at that point. But it's PG-13.
It's amazing.
So.
It's amazing because when he's sitting there and he goes to the mosque and he preaches, and then he meets with Shorty afterwards, and he's sitting there, and it's like, it's such a complete conversion.
Yeah, he's a completely different man.
But he's when he goes up to preach, it's inflammatory.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Because it's the opposite of what.
It's the opposite of what white people tell people that is acceptable.
It's the opposite of what Martin Luther King was teaching. In
a lot of ways, yeah. Although he never preached violence. It should be noted that he was as he never preached violence, but he did not preach against defending yourself.
Right.
So
But he's trying to create, and this movie does it visually, beautifully does it visually, trying to create a sense of social order in that within a group, within a culture that has been denied it, and is saying, we are going to defend ourselves.
Right.
And that brilliant scene, it's almost militaristic when they go and get their brother out of prison, who's been railroaded to prison and is being beaten.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a military order, because he tells them to look out the window, and they're lined up.
Right, and
like
and
troops.
they're like, okay, disperse. This is Peter Boyle. It's okay, disperse, and nobody moves, and he just holds up his hand and he points, and everybody the whole crowd disperses. It's and when he's that's too much power for one man to have. If a white man had done the same thing, that line would not have been said.
If he'd been a military general,
yeah.
If he were Eisenhower,
yeah,
he'd been hailed as a hero.
Right. But no, he was labeled as dangerous because
it scared white people to death, because this wasn't Martin Luther King's protesters. This was a man who would walk in, look you straight in the eye, and tell you, and absolutely tell you, and he's not backing down.
Right.
He's not asking.
Right.
He's
demanding respect. He's demanding the respect that other people get without having to do anything.
It's like, I'm not going to crawl.
Right.
Don't expect me to crawl.
I'm a man just like you. Don't and you know his wife, you know, is a woman just like your wife. Why do I have to beg for acceptance when
I got blood in my veins just like you?
Exactly. It's the Shylock speech from Merchant of Venice.
Hath not a Jew eyes.
Right.
Ears, organs, dimensions.
Right. And that can be applied to any minority.
Yeah.
Because it's all true. Everybody's the same, and but people are not treated the same, and that has been one of the default things for humanity is trying to make your group the superior group, and if you can subjugate anybody to make yourself feel better, you will. It's regrettably, human nature is disgusting. It's up one side and down the other, and if
it weren't for all the bloodshed, history would be hilarious.
It would be the Patton Oswalt routine about Skycake.
Yeah.
It's which is exactly it, except with death, and therefore not funny. But I am stunned by this movie every time I watch it. I've only seen it 3 times, and I'm sitting there watching it the other night, and I'm like, why don't I watch this more often?
Well, and I'm amazed that you get to the individual, because a lot of these biographies, and I'm thinking hard and fast of the Iron Lady, which was about somebody who was extraordinarily controversial, Margaret Thatcher, and the movie is working as hard as it can to not be controversial.
Right. That did everything it could to just say, look, Meryl Streep is playing Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah. That's all you really need.
And you know, forget the fact that she was a terrible authoritarian, racist, and all sorts of...
And not dealing with... And I hate it when biographies do this, because Bohemian Rhapsody did this.
It's just trying to make them look good.
Well, not just trying to make them look good, but cherry-picking the big red-letter moments. And only dealing with those.
And that's nothing new. If you go back Oh my God! What 1932? The movie about Benjamin Disraeli. Oh, that.
Stay tuned because that is on my. I do a column called Tuesdays with Oscar.
Yeah.
And George Arliss's performance is coming up.
Oh my
pretty
God!
Soon.
That is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
yeah,
I can't stand these biographies that either do the tabloid trash like Judy did, or do the red letter moments like the Iron Lady did, and they don't focus on the human being. The great thing about this movie is that it is about his entire life.
Right.
It is about the conversion that he has from a scared kid to a criminal to a man who educated himself by reading the dictionary, to a leader who preached anti-white rhetoric, to going to Mecca, which is the most magical scene in the film. He goes to Mecca and he writes back to his wife, "You may be shocked by these words, but I have drank from the same cup and ate from the same plate with fellow Muslims whose skin is the whitest of white." And it changes his mind and his philosophy and his outlook.
It completely uproots his entire philosophy up until that point, from prison to then.
Because when you actually spend time with good people, it doesn't matter what their background is. When you spend time with good, honest, honorable people, and you talk to them and you understand their philosophy and their life, it doesn't matter, because he's being taught. He had been taught by the teachings of the honorable quote unquote Elijah Muhammad, that all white people are evil. And then he goes to Mecca and he meets white Muslims, and it's like, they're not evil.
Right. They're worshiping the same, deity that I am, and they're sharing with me, and they're genuinely like good people. So that was like a real eye opener for him.
Wasn't it amazing? Wasn't it amazing? You've got a film that starts in the streets of Harlem, or streets of Boston, and then the arc of this film, and there's this scene where he comes over the sand and he sees the pyramids. What a scale to arrive on. Yeah. And they go to the I forget the name of the stone that the Muslims make the pilgrimage to. And there are millions of thousands and thousands of people around it, and they're praying on it. And he says at that moment, he says, "It's the first time, as I'm standing there praying," he says, "it's the first time I ever felt myself as a man." And it's just so beautiful, that conversion. You don't get that kind of conversion.
No, I mean, even when...
Even a fine film like Lincoln, for example.
There's a problem, there's a consistent problem with biopics that are the deification of whomever they are telling the story of, because they want to prove that these people deserve a story told about them. If you go to the movie Ray,
then how do you explain Downfall? Downfall's a great movie. Don't get me wrong.
Biopics about universally terrible people, they don't really try to make look better. But if you look
Downfall's about Hitler,
right? Yeah. If you look at Ray,
it kind of makes him look like an asshole.
The primary focus is, yes, he's brilliant and he's a great man, and he, everything that he did was nice, but he also cheated on his wife and did heroin. So see, he was fallible, and we're making sure that we put that in, even though they don't go into how he really destroyed his marriage and how he,
I think it does make him I don't mind those inserts because at least it makes him, at least
No.
it's an attempt to try and make him human.
I'm happy that they're there. It's just, it feels like they're specifically there to get them off the hook for not really digging into him for his faults.
Canonizing.
Right. So it's, there's sometimes there's that attempt at saying, okay, well, look, we acknowledge that that this person did some bad things, but they made up for it spontaneously and everything was okay.
I tell you what I can't stand. I tell you what I can't stand is when you see a movie that you absolutely. There's some movies that are absolutely wretched, but there are others that you can see the potential in it that the filmmaker is not embracing.
Those are
The Iron
worse
Lady.
Because you can see
The
how
Iron
it could have
Lady
been better, and you're like, oh.
The Iron Lady was like that because the opening scene of that movie, you see the elder Margaret Thatcher suffering from dementia, talking to the ghost of her late husband. This woman who had all the power in the world, and it's so shrunk down to this mind that is just, it's not capable of retaining the basic daily functions of being able to live.
Yeah. She had gotten to the point at that life that Ronald Reagan was at the same time that she was prime minister.
Pretty much. But I found it interesting. It's like, okay, there's your story.
Yeah.
There's your movie right there.
Yeah.
You don't even have to go back and tell me, about all of that other stuff. This is your movie. And I'm thinking, and you just threw it away. And it was like, okay. But this one, but the Malcolm X is the way you get it right because they find the evolution in the person.
And he takes his time in illustrating.
It's a very patient movie.
It is. It's very it gives Malcolm X the time and the ability to make natural progressions in his character instead of having things spontaneously happen. Lee makes sure.
Or here you were expecting this.
Right. So Lee does everything he can to give you the clearest image of the man that he can in the limited time that he has. And even though it's 3 hours and 22 minutes, it is still a very limited time because you cannot tell a person's entire life in 3 hours.
Right.
But he tried to give us, and the clarity of that is like you can see that he was clearly doing that because all of the narration that Washington speaks is all pulled from the autobiography of Malcolm X as told to Alex Haley. It's all lifted, straight passages, not rewritten at all, taken straight out. So there was a distinctive attempt to show every side possible and let the audience decide whether he should be known as a hero or painted as a villain or just seen as a man who just wanted the best for people. And the stuff at the end, the I Am Malcolm X, I think it always brings a tear to my eye.
I'm amazed by also. I'm amazed by all of that, but in particular, where he is by the time he gets back from Mecca. Because one thing I learned about this film, and I did not know this, is that every Muslim, it's mandated that you have to make the pilgrimage
if you can,
at least once in your life.
Right. If every Muslim who is able.
Who's able.
Right. So if you just cannot get money together for a plane ticket, and you know they do, you know, say, you know, that's, we get it, like, you're off the hook, but yeah, no, that's
I did not know this.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, that is a basic tenet of Islamic teaching.
I was reminded of when he went to, and Spike Lee said when this film was over, when this film came out, and I don't think he's wrong. I like that he admitted this. He said, "I have made the best film I know how to make," and I get that.
Yeah.
And he did, because he'd been working on this for so long.
He poured everything he had into this, and he had,
and the best of his talent came out of it.
Yeah, and you know, pouring in the best of what he has, he had some pretty damn good stuff.
Yeah,
like
he did.
He is, you know, his best is, I think, Spike Lee at his most mediocre is better than some of the higher regarded filmmakers. I know that his,
I'm going to tell you,
his middle grade stuff
Spike Lee's
can be
a great, brilliant filmmaker, and I mean, this is his best film. But I'm telling you, he's made some dogs.
Well, yes.
Because I'll never forget, She Hate Me was wretched.
I hated Summer of Sam.
I like Summer of Sam. I hated. Oh God, what was that? I had it and I just lost. Oh, the one about the. Oh, what's the name of it? It's the one about the girl who gets a job with phone sex.
Oh, Girl 6.
Girl 6.
Yeah.
God, that movie was terrible.
Even the ones who have like questionable stories are still well put together.
Oh, they're beautifully put together.
I mean,
there's nothing wrong with the craft. It's just sometimes the story is just garbage. Because I watched She Hate Me, and I'm like, what is this? Is there a reel missing? What am I watching?
Yeah. And something like Jungle Fever that he tried to pack.
Fever was a mess.
He tried to pack as much commentary as humanly possible, whether it had anything to do with the last thing that he was trying to talk about or not. It felt like he was like, I have to say everything now because I have no idea if I'm going to get to make another movie after this.
It felt like a TV show in which you have all of these interlocking stories that kind of go back and forth, and that would build over the course of a season. But he's got them mushed into this thing, and what you're focused on,
and it's under 2 hours. Jungle Fever.
And you're sitting there, and you're like, I'm focused in on the love story, but then I've got to deal with all of these other subplots.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
specifically the drug addicted brother played by Sam Jackson. All of that felt shoehorned to me.
Yeah,
like
it felt like pieces of another movie.
Right. A good movie.
But like, still, I'm just like, it's whiplash because you're going back and forth.
Yeah, but I mean, craft-wise, he's
never made an uninteresting film.
That's true.
He's never made anything that you could just sit down and say, well, he threw this together. No.
Even Old Boy is well put together, just not a. It just shouldn't have been done. It was fine the first way.
I know he loves Old Boy. I know he loves film. I know he loves that film. It just didn't work. It was
no. It worked.
Miracle at St. Anna.
Oh, I loved that movie. Oh, I loved that movie.
You liked it more than I did.
Yeah.
I liked it. I'll just say I liked it, but I just kind of forgot about it.
Adored it. I really enjoyed it.
How many movies has he made with Denzel? I'm told
know.
He's made 4, but I can count 3.
Well, made this. He Got Game.
Mo Better Blues. And there's a 4th one somewhere, and I read that he'd made 4 of them, and I was like,
there is. I don't know why I can't think of it though.
He Got Game is extraordinary.
That is. Well, talk amongst yourselves. I'll look this up.
Yes. But one thing about this is that, and I compare it again to other contemporary biographies,
Mm-hmm.
in that I think, if you think about it, this is not a safe subject
Inside
for
Man.
a movie. Inside Man, okay. This is not a safe subject for a movie.
No.
Gandhi, Lawrence of Arabia, Freddie Mercury,
Mm-hmm.
Judy Garland.
Mm-hmm.
Those are safe subjects.
Oh, yeah.
Malcolm X was not a safe subject. It was controversial because of the man.
Mm-hmm.
But the attitude toward the man was amazing.
Yeah.
I love this. Like I said before, I love how the character goes from one extreme to the other.
Right.
I will say that, and I told you this off mic, I think if the movie has, I won't say a low point, but when he comes back from Mecca, and this is not this is not Spike Lee's fault. This is not anybody's fault, but when he comes back from Mecca, he gets so upset at the establishment that he has a target on his back.
Yes. Yeah, he is marked for death. He knows
and
it.
He's getting death threats.
And the beautiful thing of it is, he knows that he is putting himself and probably his family at risk.
Right.
Just like his own father.
And they blow up his house.
Yeah. Just like his childhood home.
Right.
Molotov cocktails through the window.
Mm-hmm.
Klan burning it. Same thing happened, just, different people. Louis Farrakhan. Anyway, sorry.
I had heard this, that he had actually asked Louis. He was actually going to have the character of Louis Farrakhan in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Louis Farrakhan threatened Spike Lee directly.
Yeah, because there's no real way to specifically name him without saying he was one of the people that killed Malcolm X. There's no fine line there. It's like, if you say his name, you immediately implicate him in the death of Malcolm X. And there's no real way to soft pedal that. And Spike wouldn't have soft pedaled that at all.
Well, you get down to the point where it comes to the end. I think some of the energy in the film that has been there before, it has to inevitably get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel a little bit like it has to go here.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie kind of has to get on a track where the rest of the film is evolving and things are changing, and you can feel the sense of it. This feels more like we've got to get here. Yeah. Because you've got to get to the assassination.
And he makes a point of explicitly calling out the FBI as collaborators with the Nation of Islam to assassinate him.
Right.
It's like, oh, they're not acting alone. And I like that it was not presented as these black people hated this black person because he spoke out against them. It was the white man using them as a tool to get him out of the public eye.
Right.
So that they could blame it on the Nation of Islam. But still really be the ones that were pushing the whole thing.
Yeah, but when he goes to that auditorium, I can't watch this scene. He goes to the auditorium, and I think the line that gets me is when he's sitting backstage and he says, "Are Betty and the kids here?" And the guy says, "Yeah, they're right out front." I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's like, ooh, front row seat.
Front row seat for this. And you go out there and you see these close-ups. I'm telling you, Spike Lee is the master of the insert shot.
Mm-hmm.
He goes out there and he stands there, and you see these insert shots of these people smiling and clapping, and then you get these others that are just sitting there with this angry, straight face.
Yeah.
Some of them are not applauding.
Yeah. And even it takes a lot for me to not like Giancarlo Esposito in a movie or a show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like him in that.
Well, no, you're not supposed to.
I know you're not supposed to, but like I said, he is such a magnificent actor. It is hard to not like him.
And the world has become a better place now that he is now in the Star Wars universe.
Yes, agreed.
General Gideon.
Yeah, Moff.
Moff Gideon, yes.
Yeah, I love him in everything he does.
He gets his ass kicked in this movie. Because I'm telling you.
Yeah, his fate is not particular. His fate is the worst out of all of the people that attacked Malcolm X.
Spike Lee is. I want to say this. We've also talked, and this is also the case of with Do the Right Thing. He kind of has a great control over chaos.
Mm-hmm.
When chaos breaks out, like it did at the end of Do the Right Thing, and like it does at the end of the movie here. Crowd control is a very difficult thing for a director to deal with.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with random mass chaos.
Mm-hmm. This is just executed so amazingly.
It is.
And the Esposito's face is contorted in a way when they're on him. He's already been shot in the knee. People are just mobbing him. You actually feel bad for him for a second because you can tell that he is terrified for his life, with good reason. I mean, because...
And they've dogpiled on top of him when he gets in the hallway.
Yeah, I mean, that is by every way of how it looks, this man is not going to get out of this alive, one way or another, and he feels it too, but he's caught off guard by it because somehow I don't think he thought there was any real chance that he or his compatriots would get caught.
This was a pure, absolute assassination in the worst way because not only did they shoot him, they ran up to the stage and shot him again.
They Sonny Corleoned him.
Malcolm X was shot 16 times.
Yeah, and if you look at the way that they did it, a sawed-off shotgun to both shoulders knocked him down, and basically he would have bled out from that if it didn't take his heart out right from there. But then he's laying there, and they shoot him all up his right side.
Right.
I mean...
They were going to make sure he was dead.
Yeah. I mean...
And we should probably talk about what led to this, because... at least the movie suggests that the reason for it is because people thought that it started with people thought he was getting too much press.
Mm-hmm.
He was, and even Elijah Muhammad tells him this, that he's becoming too...
he's becoming the face of the religion instead of him, and he didn't like that the focus was being taken off of himself.
He can't help it if he's a better orator, But I mean, he's out there and he's going on television, and he's saying things that shocked white people.
Mm-hmm. Well, because
They'd never heard this stuff before.
No,
from a
because
black
they
man.
were all sheltered from the reality of what was being perpetrated upon.
And you had a black man in a tailored suit sitting on a stage on a talk show
with a book,
and he's not speaking with broken English.
Mm-hmm.
He's not speaking the way that they're used to hearing black people talk. Right. He's speaking like an educated man. What's interesting to me is... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What's interesting to me is the player that he becomes in the media and with his orator. Because when he's at Harvard, his manner of speaking is very calm, very logical. You know, he talks about, you know, the responsibility of men. You know, anybody can have sex with a woman.
Right,
it's
but
somebody else to take care
to
of
be a
that woman.
father, yeah.
But it's very calm and logical. Then he's out on the street, and he gives that speech about, you know, you've been had.
He knows his audience. He knew his audience.
He knew his audience.
Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther
He could
King
have been
Jr.
a politician.
Oh yeah.
My God.
I'm reminded when I think of them and the general attitude, the immediate hostility against them, specifically from whites. It reminds me of I think it was D.L. Hughley, of all people, who said, you know, black men, if you want to scare white people, don't pick up a gun, pick up a book. Because there is nothing more frightening to white people than a black man with a book. And it's funny when he does it, but it's true, and it's borne out in American history, in world history. I mean, look at what happened to Nelson Mandela. I mean,
which is why for hundreds of years in this country, it was illegal to teach a black person how to read.
Yeah, because they didn't want them to find out that they were being hoodwinked, bamboozled, lied to. Yeah, I mean, and because all of that is true. It's weird for me to say, but I like 90% of what he says, mostly at the end, I wholeheartedly agree with.
Yeah.
But the accusations that he's making against white people, specifically up to that point, even when he's preaching, when he's in his pro-blackness preaching, you could call it anti-white, he's not wrong. His solution is wrong.
Yeah.
But his identification and calling out of everything that's wrong is 100% accurate. And, you know, which is very disheartening as a white man to know that this is all really, if you really want to take a step back, it's true.
If the end of the movie, after he shot and killed, I wish Spike Lee had done this, because if you've ever heard Ossie Davis talk about what happened next, it would break your heart.
Yeah.
Because when they went to have his funeral service, the body, of course, was dressed in one of his suits. And they did the viewing, and people came around. And then they went to the cemetery. And after all the mourners had left, he said the graveside attendants were there. And they were there with their shovels. And he said, we walked up to them and we said, no, we will bury this brother. And he was stripped of his Western clothes. And he was put into the traditional burial for a Muslim. And I'm thinking to myself, that would have been a beautiful ending to this film.
It would have been a beautiful epilogue.
But the way he tells it is probably better than you ever could have visualized.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And if you've ever heard his eulogy, we're going to tack it on to the end of this show. Yeah. It is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Ossie Davis's eulogy for Malcolm X is extraordinary. He redid it years later. Yeah. But the end of the film is trying more or less to be a celebration of the man.
Yeah. It's like, yes, he's a controversial figure, but that doesn't make him any less important and any less great.
Did you sit all the way through the credits?
Yeah, I think so.
Because in the end credits, there are all these celebrities. There's Michael Jordan, Janet Jackson. They're all wearing the hats with the X on it. Then all of a sudden, Bill Cosby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, jeez.
I never thought that I would actually say this, but I'm really glad he's going to die in prison.
I have the same problem with Poor Little Girls. Because he's briefly interviewed in that.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're in the moment, and then all of a sudden Bill Cosby, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary
It's tragic
film.
what Bill Cosby did to himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to say what happened to him, because everything he did, he brought on himself.
Right.
It's his fault that he is in prison.
But this is an extraordinary film. It is the best film Spike Lee ever made. It is one of the best films of the decade.
It's one of the... I would put this on a list of great American movies.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout film history, this needs to be on that list. This needs to be part of that discussion. And I think it's always been included in that 1001 movies you should see before you die.
Yeah, and Spike Lee, a lot of people have this hatred for Spike Lee because he's so outspoken. And
because he tells them things they don't want to hear.
Right.
He's not wrong. They just don't want to hear it. Because it makes them feel bad.
What's he supposed to do? Not speak his mind?
Yes.
I mean, what's he supposed to do? Just sit down?
The expectation is that he'll toe the line and say, look, I've made it, and you can too, by following the rules.
Sitting down on the ground and just shutting up
and
doing what you're supposed to.
Because he makes white people uncomfortable. He makes some white people uncomfortable, and that has they've gone forward with that and given him a bad reputation. So, you know, he's hard to work with. He's militant. He's not. He seems like the nicest person you could possibly imagine.
And he's a movie fan.
He is.
He loves movies.
He loves movies.
And the other thing is and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end the show with this.
Yeah.
His criticism of Tyler Perry is not wrong.
No, it's not.
Tyler Perry makes shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
films he produces.
He's a gifted playwright.
He's a gifted playwright who cannot make a movie to save his life.
No. He can act in them quite well.
My dog can make a movie better than that.
He's quite a good actor, film actor.
Yeah.
When he wants to be, but anything that he writes
in other people's
movies.
Right.
But when he has no capacity for filmmaking.
His movies are dog shit.
Yes,
and I've seen quite a few of them. That character that he plays is the most irritating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how many people line up for his movies. That character is the most irritating. And I'm sorry, and Spike Lee was not wrong. The character is the bug-eyed, clownish, buffoonish.
Yeah. Medea is quite possibly the most racist contemporary film character I have seen.
Stereotype.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite movies of the last few years. Did you ever see a movie called Top 10?
No, but I really wanted to.
It's a good movie. It's Chris Rock is he plays a guy who's basically just trying really to rediscover himself and get over a lot of the problems that have he's a fading star, and he's kind of trying to. So he goes out and he makes this brilliant film about this former slave who led the people, and so all this, and it's the movie Harriet Should Have Been.
Right.
He goes to the theater and there's nobody there, and he goes to the theater next door, and it's crowded because there's Medea's running around in a haunted house. That is such a commentary.
Yeah.
On the American taste.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that movie at some point.
Not everybody goes to the movies to be preached to. I kind of like being preached to, but
I do too.
It's like Bob Dylan said in "Don't Look Back." He said, people are just there for entertainment. You don't go out to be whipped, and if you do, isn't that your form of entertainment? You're still being entertained if you go out to be whipped. So
now look, I don't mind a bag of potato chips now and then.
Oh yeah.
But it can't be your entire nutrition.
Right. I love myself a good candy bar, but that can't be dinner.
That can't be dinner. You got to go out and get some nutrition, do something. But that's all I got.
Yeah. So, what do we have coming up? We have a starkly different.
Next week is as starkly different as we can possibly make it. Oh, Shuda.
DB Jedi. DB Jedi.
Run to gosh. Next week, we're going to have a little fun. We're coming out of Black History.
Sorry.
Next week, we're coming out of Black History Month with what I hope is a lot of fun. We're going to talk about Return of the Jedi. And we're going to talk about this from beginning to end.
Yeah, this will be our first original trilogy film that we're talking about by itself.
Right.
Right. We've only talked about them in concert with each other.
As a regular episode.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about the ones as they've come out.
Right, but I mean original trilogy.
Right.
This is the first original trilogy that we're doing by itself.
It's just, I wanted to have some fun and kind of, we're just going to have a few laughs.
Because it's one of the greatest messes of a movie that you could ever possibly imagine.
It is. It is. And it's the goofiest Star Wars movie I think has ever been made. They're all goofy in their own way, but man, this one just, it's a beautiful mess.
But I will always love it.
Absolutely.
I will always love it.
These movies are like family.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we've got coming up next week, and then we're going back to Sweden, but without Mr. Bergman. For My Life as a Dog, Lasse Hallström.
One week when we don't go to Sweden. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, every time you pick one, can't we have one Christmas when we don't go to Finland?
Well, look, I haven't picked my second December pick yet, so maybe not. We will see. I
got some ideas.
We'll see if we end up visiting the land of the midnight sun for Christmas this year. But that wraps it up here for us. You can find all of our episodes on iTunes and YouTube. You can find everything at the podbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find us on Twitter at pod_bay. Copy and paste that over at Patreon. You will find us there too. There are a couple of episodes only there that are not on iTunes or YouTube, but not many. But there is some exclusive content there. We thank you so much for listening, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Here, at this final hour, in this quiet place, Harlem has come to bid farewell to one of its brightest hopes, extinguished now and gone from us forever. It is not in the memory of man that this beleaguered, unfortunate, but nonetheless proud community has found a braver, more gallant young champion than this Afro-American who lies before us, unconquered still. I say the word again as he would want me to, Afro-American. Afro-American Malcolm. Malcolm had stopped being Negro years ago. It had become too small, too puny, too weak a word for him. Malcolm was bigger than that. Malcolm had become an Afro-American, and he wanted so desperately that all his people would become Afro-Americans too. There are those who still consider it their duty as friends of the Negro people to tell us to revile him, to flee even from the presence of his memory, to save ourselves by writing him out of the history of our turbulent times. And we will smile. They will say that he is of hate, a fanatic, a racist, who can only bring evil to the cause for which you struggle. And we will answer and say unto them, did you ever talk to Brother Malcolm? Did you ever touch him or have him smile at you? Did you ever really listen to him?
You haven't done the right thing.
Was he ever himself associated with violence or any public disturbance? For if you did, you would know him. And if you knew him, you would know why we must honor him. Malcolm was our manhood, our living black manhood. This was his meaning to his people, and in honoring him, we honor the best in ourselves. However much we may have differed with him or with each other about him and his value as a man, let his going from us serve only to bring us together now. Consigning these mortal remains to earth, the common mother of all, secure in the knowledge that what we place in the ground is no more now a man, but a seed, which after the winter of our discontent will come forth again to meet us, and we shall know him then for what he was and is, a prince, our own black shining prince, who didn't hesitate to die because he loved us so.
And so today, May 19th, we celebrate Malcolm X's birthday because he was a great, great Afro-American. And Malcolm X is you, all of you. And you are Malcolm X.
I'm Malcolm X!
I'm Malcolm X!
I'm Malcolm X!
I'm Malcolm X!
I'm Malcolm X! I am Malcolm X!
I am Malcolm X! I am Malcolm X!
I am Malcolm X!
I am Malcolm X!
As Brother Malcolm said, we declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be given the rights of a human being, to be respected as a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence.
By any means necessary.